Task force, now just 2 weeks away from the Falklands, the pressure was on. In charge of the Vulcan operation to bomb the runway at Port Stanley was Wing Commander Simon Baldwin. He lived on a diet of bacon sandwiches and pipe tobacco.
I can't overemphasize how quickly things were happening. I had no time to think. We were just reacting. We were doing things and trying to make things work.
Baldwin sent the crews on practice runs to attack the island of Garvey off the coast of Scotland. The crews had been skillfully trained to drop nuclear bombs, but it had been 10 years since they'd done any conventional bombing. Now they had to relearn techniques that dated back to World War II, using the same iron bombs dropped from Lancasters.
We dropped these bombs and you felt them go off sort of underneath you. And it was pretty exciting stuff just to do that without anyone shooting at you.
The crews loved it, but the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds were understandably not happy.
And the RSPB were absolutely devastated that we were wiping out seagulls at Garvey Island and requested that we stop doing it immediately. We were trying to go to war, but they didn't seem to appreciate that. We felt very sorry for the seagulls. He lies.
The crews were going to have to hit a runway just 120 feet wide. This demanded a degree of accuracy not normally required with nuclear bombs.
With the Vulcan, the accuracy that we had, we'd be quite lucky to hit the runway at all.
And while the crew might miss the target, it looked increasingly likely that the Argentinians would hit the Vulcan. When Baldwin received the latest intelligence on the air defences at Port Stanley, it made sober reading. The dossier revealed that the Argentinians had state-of-the-art weaponry, including the Tiger Cat, built by the British.
We were going in against the Argentinians with really modern radar-laid guns, big shells, explosive shells that they could fire at goodness only knows how many per second, which could easily shoot a Vulcan out of the sky. And going in at low level at night, I didn't really see how we could survive it.
Crews were told to make their wills.
You can't get around the fact it's a war, and you write out your will and you take the dog for a walk around Harmston Village and you think, I wonder if I'll ever see that place again.
Right, should you be captured at all, and they will give you the opportunity to write a letter.
And in case they did survive and were captured, they were taught how to write secret coded messages and what to do if they were paraded in front of enemy TV cameras.
I found it quite amusing when they said, "But if you're telling the truth, scratch the right-hand side of your nose. If you're telling a lie under duress, scratch the left-hand side of your nose."
We have to recover those islands, for the people on them are British, of British stock, and they still owe allegiance to the Crown.
As the task force continues southwards, the government has given more details of the merchant ships.
With the task force a week away from the Falklands, Mrs. Thatcher still hoped that regular TV updates showing that the British meant business would be enough to send the Argentinians packing.
Troops have been going through their weapons drill in readiness for a possible landing on the Falklands.
The Royal Air Force has already shown pictures of their Vulcan bombers converted from the nuclear bombing role to that of conventional bombing.
Exhausted from round-the-clock training, the Vulcan crews now found that their supposedly secret mission was part of that message. Watch out, the Brits are coming.
To reach the Falklands, they would have to fly the bombers from Ascension Island, refueling them in mid-air.
Our attitude to it was, oh, great, why don't you give them the date and time? You've given them everything else.
On Monday the 26th, Sir Michael Beetham, head of the RAF, arrived to rally the troops and told them the mission was on.
I really wanted then for the crews to see me and to wish them well. They were, after all, embarking, as I told them, on a dangerous mission, but they could do it.
Reeve volunteered for the mission.
For once, I put myself forward a little bit, because normally I'm not bothered. Give me an aircraft to fly and I'm perfectly happy. But I remember saying, there is no way you can keep me out of this.
Reeve landed the top job. Withers was told he would also be flying, but only as backup. Monty was sent to oversee the operation from Ascension. Soon, they would be off to war.
Saying goodbye was not easy. It's a thing I'd never done before. I'd never said goodbye and gone off to war. I know it sounds very dramatic, but it was possible that we might not return.
It was probably ideal. I saw her for about half a minute. Just time to say bye-bye. And the strangest thought crossed my mind. You know, my father was in the war, in the Navy during the war, and he didn't see my mother for years on end. And I thought, you know, in just a little way, this is what tens of thousands of people have done before. And now it's my turn.
The night before we fly down, obviously you chat to the wife. Pat was tremendously supportive, and I had no qualms at all about going. I knew if anything happened to me, she'd look after the kids fine. There was no problem at all there.
The two Vulcan crews prepared to take off for their midway base on Ascension Island.
Remove all trucks and ground equipment.
It was a miracle. In just 3 weeks, Waddington had gone from a peacetime base onto a full war footing, transforming near obsolete bombers into new fighting machines. Eight hours later, the two Vulcans were circling the British island of Ascension. This remote volcanic outpost was a perfect base for the attack on Port Stanley.
Ascension Island was amazing. It was just unbelievable. I still can remember just sort of circling around and seeing this strange-looking island, a volcanic island. Looked like one big slag heap, really, on the western side. Very unattractive.
The place was heaving, absolutely heaving. It really was something where something was happening. You think, oh, quite pleased to be part of this.
Ascension had become the busiest airport on the planet. The Vulcans arrived to find a huge armada of 12 Victor aircraft, the refueling tankers that would take the Vulcan down to the Falklands. That evening, with a 50th birthday party to celebrate, Withers and his crew hit the town.
We had to find somewhere to go and celebrate that night, and we found more than one place to celebrate.
Happy birthday! We had a few drinks, and we had a few drinks more, and suddenly I'm 50 years old. We must have got to bed 2:30 in the morning.
Waking up with a little bit of a hangover the next day.
Later that morning, the RAF sent a signal. The mission, codename Operation Blackbuck, was on for 11 o'clock that night. It was time for one final check on the Vulcan's payload.
Suddenly you're looking at 1,000 bombs, and you realise that that means business.
it was going to take a staggering 11 Victor tankers to refuel the one Vulcan on its 8,000-mile round trip. Group Captain Jeremy Price led the team to thrash out a plan.
The refueling plan was very, very complex. It was something that had never been tried before, and a lot of the work was done on a £5 pocket calculator bought in Swaffham Market.
The plan is that this vast armada flies to the first refueling point. Half the Victors refuel the other half, one Victor refuels the Vulcan, and then those aircraft return to base. The procedure is repeated at the next refueling point, and again, until there's just one Victor left to refuel the Vulcan before its final